Welcome back to part 2 of The Dark Night of the Soul.
The Kevin Paston story.
Ooh, should be my memoir.
Mm-hmm. Memoir.
Okay, so for sake of time, we are going to skip forward. When was this? What month are we in here?
We're in like August, September of 2022.
Okay, so I'm doing everything I can to try to get out of this. And here's the thing. I said the only thing I didn't do was nothing. Me going to a therapist was one of the best things I ever did. Mm-hmm. So when I say don't do anything and sit with you can absolutely, by all means, please get a therapist. Please get a therapist that will help you through and work through how your mind is programmed. Mm-hmm. It was, my last therapist that I was with for a year, her name's Brianna Shaw. And shout out Brianna. She was an angel. She was literally an angel sent to me to help me come back into my body, come back into myself. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't mean, I think what I meant by that was like, don't go out and spend your whole paycheck on healing modalities. Like pick one, try it out and see how you respond. So we're going to skip now. We're in August. We're going to skip until our breakup, which is the following July. So basically a year of what I've talked about.
Turmoil.
Utter turmoil. Still off my medicine.
Us being completely disconnected. Mm-hmm. Not knowing how to help each other or ourselves.
Right. So I finally get to the place where I know in my heart that in order for me to actually heal, I have to, as my Boston, I have to give myself 100% of my attention. Mm-hmm. And as I mentioned in the other episode, I couldn't do it because Rachel was so worried about me and had no idea really what was going on. And I blanked.
It was just one of those moments where, like, again, like everything else that was happening, to our human mind, it didn't make sense. We knew we loved each other. We knew we saw a future with each other. We knew this was different than any other relationship we had ever been a part of. And yet, we both knew something wasn't working. And Kevin knew inside of his own journey that for him to truly let go of any crutches, of any, because let's be honest, like the versions of ourselves that we were then was never going to make it in a relationship.
No way.
Because we were such mirrors for each other, as every relationship is. And I remember saying that to you at one point. I remember like my rock bottom at that moment in time, as I remember saying to him, maybe that's all we're meant to be for each other. Maybe we're just meant to be these massive mirrors for each other.
Yeah, I do. I remember that conversation actually.
And so you got to the place, and me being, a caretaker and not wanting to look at myself and what, that I needed to have self-love and compassion for myself. I knew if I let go of him, I would have to just deal with me. And I don't think I was, I know I wasn't that cognizant of it then. But it took you getting to the place where you realized, because at that point we get to July of 2023, and I go on vacation with my family. I go back east with my family. Kevin chooses to stay because he's going through what he's going through. And of course,
couldn't even get on a plane.
No. It would have been such a disaster. And again, I felt some semblance of relief because I was like, okay, I'm going to get to just focus on my family and not have to worry about keeping him grounded in this world.
Yeah, so she gets back and she was teaching at the studio. I had class at the studio. And she
We passed each other, I remember, in the hallway.
And we're still together at this point.
He was just very, this was his MO at the time. He was just very reserved. He was very quiet. I could tell that something was on his mind, but had no idea.
And like, I shouldn't even have been in acting class. It was, my nervous system was so shot, but like, I just wanted to stay creative. You know,
connected to people.
I wanted to still audition, even though there's no possible way I could have ever been on set. I could have ever carried anything. Like I was, but you know, wishful thinking. And the way the universe works is, you know, I was set up with this beautiful acting manager who was going through her own journey at the time.
And you guys were so upfront with each other about it, which was so beautiful.
And she took me on, and for a year she didn't get me a single appointment.
Which was a godsend.
Absolutely. But I, in my mind, in my psyche, who wanted to still be an actor, I felt like I was taken care of, and I felt like, okay, I'm still in the mix. I'm still, you know, doing the thing that I came out here to do.
But God was like, homie, we're not getting you anything.
And it was great. It was honestly exactly what I needed.
So we break up.
And the hardest thing I've ever had to do, I remember, you know, she was spending the night, and we decided to kind of do everything that we really enjoyed doing that night. Like, you know, I think we made dinner. And it was like any other night of us. And then we woke up the next morning.
I didn't have to be anywhere until that evening teaching a class.
That's what it was.
So we just decided to spend the whole day together.
That's what it was. The next day we decided to spend the whole day together. And we got up, you know, after having a beautiful like cuddle session for an hour in the morning and probably talking.
Well, because that night was the first time I had one of my uncontrollably shaking panic attacks.
Right.
But I was with somebody, and I remember saying to you, my body is releasing something, but I feel nothing up here. Like I wasn't having a single thought. There wasn't really any fear attached to it. And he was like, do you want me to hold you? And I said, yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
And I just let my body do the release that you had been experiencing.
Yeah. So we woke up the next morning and we talked about that whole experience. We went up and went to our favorite coffee shop.
And got breakfast.
It's
such a rom-com.
I know. And what else did we do that day?
I remember it was the first time you showed me you were a part of this newsletter, this like spiritual newsletter. Oh, the one that sends you a note from the universe once a day.
Oh, yeah.
And he
Notes
was
from the
having a
universe.
bunch of different channels on. And I remember it was the first time you showed me a channel.
So this was like the first, it was the first time that the Mike Dooley was holding, I think it was called The Awakening or whatever, The Awakening 2. And he had like 5 of the biggest channels on at the time.
So we watched that.
Over the course of like 5 weeks.
Yeah.
And I sat her down and I showed her one of them and because it resonated so much with me.
And we just talked all day and we
talked.
cried all day.
Yeah, we cried together. And then we
buried those sticks.
Yeah, we did this little ritual where we wrote something down.
It was a full moon ceremony we had done like a week or 2 before. And we still needed to do the final bit, which was something you wanted to grow about yourself. You wrote it, you wrapped around this stick, and then you bury the stick into the ground and allow it to grow with the earth.
Yeah, and our sticks are literally still buried out front.
They are. So that was the last thing we did. We went outside and did that.
We're gonna dig those
Before
things up before we
find
move
them.
out. We're gonna find them. I have a general idea of where they are.
Yeah.
So that was the last thing we did. We did that and we sat there and set the intentions, and then it was time for Rachel to leave. So I walked her to her car, and we both knew what was coming. We both knew this was the last.
For the first time, like had no idea what was to come, and that was the scariest part.
You know, gave her a kiss. She got in her car and she pulled out into the street and kind of looked over her shoulder, and I waved and she waved back and drove off to the studio.
And then burst into tears.
Yeah, she got to the studio.
I was sobbing driving there. And I remember thinking to myself, okay, I'm going to walk into class and not have a stitch of makeup on because I know I'm going to just break down at different moments. And what is the point?
And on my side, as soon as I walked in the house through the living room and shut my bedroom door, I just jumped into my bed and just started wailing again. because I was just so
heartbroken
because I knew, the thing was, is I knew when I was blissed out, I knew Rachel was it. I knew it was her. I knew without a shadow of a doubt. Even if my mind was trying to convince me otherwise, like my heart knew. But I had lost that knowing and I had lost that feeling. So it was really scary.
Yeah.
I had no idea if I was ever going to get it back. I mean, I knew, and we said this, the best shot we had to come back together was to be apart, was so that I could focus on myself, and
I could
unbeknownst to
focus
Rachel,
on myself.
she could focus on herself. And that, we're going to get into her dark night.
Yeah, we'll do that
next time.
Yeah.
So we were apart for almost a year. It was like 8 months of...
From that July 2023 to February of 2024.
Really March, I think, but yeah.
No, February was when I did my MDMA.
Okay.
So that was the first, when I FaceTimed you. And we'll get to that because you told me some stuff.
And, through this whole process, I'm still working at the bar. I'm working through, I have a better idea, more awareness of what's going on. I have an idea that okay, this is the spiritual awakening process, that things come up to be felt. You don't even necessarily need to know what they are. Sometimes you do, because you need to go back to that memory and reparent yourself. And I'm doing all this work. I'm doing this inner child work. I'm doing this reparenting. I'm working with Brianna at this point. No,
not yet.
That was after. So I'm working with a different therapist, and I'm, during neurofeedback and trying mushroom journeys, which is its own story within this dark night. And I'll tell it real quick. One of the psychics I used had a shaman in Arizona who held with his wife mushroom ceremonies. So I talked to him on the phone. I kind of explained what was going on, and I was terrified of mushrooms again, because my psyche told me that mushrooms were going to make me go crazy and I was going to lose my mind. I remember in college, a couple of my friends took mushrooms, and I was like, if I take mushrooms, drive me to the hospital and hook me up, because I'm going to lose my mind. So I had that program in my brain that I was actually going to lose my mind. But I had seen, there's so many healing properties to mushrooms. I went and did this journey, and for 6 hours, I had a panic attack, a full-blown panic attack. I remember going in, and I told them I was nervous. They said it's okay, it's normal. It's normal.
Everyone gets nervous.
My nervous system was already so shot.
Oh God, your poor nervous
that
system.
We took the mushrooms, we drank some orange juice, we laid down with our blindfolds, and they started playing music. Anybody that's been through a healing ceremony like this, they play music. They played a couple instruments, but they were also playing music through speakers. And the first time they hit the gong, 45 minutes later, I remember behind my blindfolds just seeing the wavelength of colors, and it scared the fuck out of me, because my heart rate is already... And then this gong goes off, and
you're like...
that overwhelming, if you've ever had a panic attack, that rush of energy. But I'm now under the influence of mushrooms. I'm in a stranger's house, 9 hours away from my house, with a group of 5 men that I have never met.
Who are going through their own experience.
And it was wild. It was exactly what I needed. You always hear mushrooms will give you exactly what you need, because it's the spirit of the mushroom, right? So the spirit of the mushroom knows what you need. And what I needed to do in that moment was face my biggest fear, which was panic. My whole life, I had fear of the fear. So flying, I was afraid that I was going to panic on a flight. So I had fear of that fear. On set, I was afraid that I was going to drop my lines and panic. So I was afraid before even getting there of that fear, of that happening, my whole life, right? So I was laying there writhing for 6 hours, 5.5, 6 hours in pain and anxiety. And I was, moaning, and I would look at lift my blindfold off and look around, and they're holding space, and the guy's looking at me, and he's kind of beating his chest to the drum, and telepathically I'm like, help me. Because in my mind I'm like, he must be able to hear me, right? No, he couldn't hear me. And his wife is amazing wife is singing these beautiful songs, and I look at the guy next to me, and he's blissed out of his mind, and his arms are up, and he's just having the time of his life, and I'm dying on the inside.
Yeah.
Again, my nervous system was not ready for that. My nervous system was already so shot. So when I say, like, don't go out and do things, this is what I mean. You'll know when it's time. You will genuinely know. But if you feel uncomfortable about it, listen to your body.
Listen to your body. Your body is telling you if you have the space or not.
But because it was my journey, it is what I needed in that moment.
And I remember that was the first time you said to me, oh my God, this experience was here to show me I'm not ready for something like this. And I don't need to go chasing this experience.
Again, because I felt like I had to figure it out. And again, it goes with my programming. Growing up the way I did, I always needed to know everything. I needed to have the plan. I was the fireman running into the building. Like, I needed to know the exits. It was my whole life I had been conditioned for this.
Yeah.
So I just did everything I could. And, as hard as that experience was, it also let me face my biggest fear.
So that session was December of 2023.
So we're broken up at this point.
Yeah, so we break up July of
So
2023.
That was a good time to talk about that. So
and you have this experience so I have no idea.
Yeah.
This is what's so interesting is, like, I spent the first half of Kevin's dark night with him, and then the next quarter of it, I'm unaware of anything that's happening, which is great because I'm dealing with my own stuff. But that's December of 2023.
She had actually randomly texted me
because it was
the
your
day
birthday.
before. It was I treated myself. I went to Sedona for the night before the ceremony, and then stayed in Arizona the night of the ceremony, and then drove back the next day. But she had actually just randomly texted me happy birthday. But yes, because my birthday is the 16th of December, and the ceremony was on December 17th. So she just happened. I was sitting. I went on this hike, this like 8-hour hike, because I wanted to sleep that night. So I went to this gorge, this beautiful gorge just outside Sedona, where you're just following this river, this stream, and the rocks were incredible. And I was sitting in my car, and I was having so much fear that I would just start crying. I would start crying like a little boy or a little girl would cry when they're scared. And I'm sitting there so terrified of what's going to happen tomorrow, and Rachel texts me.
I remember where I was. I was nannying for this new family in Los Angeles who got me through this breakup.
Yeah.
Getting to spend time with this beautiful boy. He got me out of bed 3 times a week. But I remember we were at the playground in West Hollywood, right across from where Kevin is working. And for whatever reason, I just was like, it's Kevin's birthday. Oh, and I'd gotten you a book. And I was like, it was one of the first times in our breakup that I felt the pull to open up communication with him again. And not even like just to be like, happy birthday,
Yeah.
I want to drop off this gift for you.
The best part about this text message that she sends me while I'm sitting here is it's exactly what I needed. Like I released even more because I was so scared, and now I could tell Rachel. I was like, hey, I'm actually in Sedona. I'm here to do a mushroom journey.
Feeling
and I'm
your energy
terrified.
over the phone.
And she wrote some sweet text, and I did the journey the next day. So yeah, that's December of 23. We're broken up, and throughout the breakup, I start realizing that this old program running with women specifically, that, what the program is that as a child, I didn't get the level of love that any child deserves from either parent, but like, not especially, but like my mother, I didn't, and God bless my mother. She was dealing with her own issues with my father. So, she gave me every single ounce that she could. And we've talked about this extensively. So it's no slight of my mother. Like, she did the absolute best that she could with her
Yeah.
own set of circumstances. But because I didn't necessarily get what I needed, I sought it out.
Validation.
I sought out validation and, you know,
And got it.
and got it from women.
Easily.
Like I was, you know, I was always a big flirt, and I consider myself witty.
Well, here's the thing with you. We've talked about this. Is you have this like perfect alchemy of you're attractive, you're charming, you know how to play up your charm. This was the toxic masculine side of things.
Yeah.
You knew how to play up your charm, you knew what to say when, you knew that you were attractive, but you also were being led by your soul in so much of your life. And so you were vulnerable and you would communicate. Now, you would communicate to the level that you knew benefited you.
Well, my actions also didn't line up with my communications.
No.
And that's what was so confusing to you.
But that's what's so funny is you did the opposite to me that you did to other women.
Yeah, but that's just because you were different.
I know, but it still was the toxic masculine
100%.
side of things. Yeah. Just in a very different way. And that's why it was so confusing.
So I bring that up, and we're going to do an episode about like our relationship and just relationships in general, divine masculine, divine feminine. But it is part of this story where I had to work through this old program of seeking validation from others, whether it be from customers at work, employees at work,
Friends.
or friends. You know, and I'll get into the details of it, but like I got really flirty with a close friend who kind of stepped in when Rachel stepped out. You know, I had known this girl. I didn't really know. I mean, I knew her, but I saw her posting about, you know, some stuff that I was going through, and I kind of reached out on Instagram, and we just became really fast friends.
And what was so beautiful about her was she was very much going through her own spiritual awakening.
100%. That's why she was posting what she was.
And so she was able to talk to you and help you on a level that I couldn't yet because I did not understand that world.
So she was imperative because
100%.
we were able to bounce things off. Like I don't want to say she stepped in and gave me what I needed. Just being able to talk to someone and not feel like that one string that I had connected to reality was going to be cut. But you know, we did muddy the lines.
Yeah, crossed a boundary.
And it was both of our traumas. You know, mine being that my energy, and she called me out on it. My energy said one thing. You know, I liked the idea of this flirty fun that we were having, all via text messages. But my words were like, yeah, I hope you know, like this, you know, I want to be with Rachel, and like, and you know, she said she was practicing surrender and not having attachment, non-attachment.
You also knew that, well, I shouldn't, because that's her own story.
Yeah. We're gonna, you know, and here's the thing, like me and this friend, we no longer speak at the moment, and I have no ill will towards her. I don't think she has any ill will towards me. It was just our programming got in the way, and I fully take responsibility because what she called me out on, she was 100% right. Like
it was that part of you that was able to be so vulnerable and hold space for people, but knowing you couldn't give her what you knew, even if she was practicing surrender and practicing non-attachment, you still knew that you could give her what she was looking for without committing.
Yeah. So, you know, that's one example. Another example is there was a girl that I worked with who, you know, gave me lots of attention, and I decided to consciously kiss her because I genuinely wanted to see how it made me feel inside, because I still had this confusion about Rachel. Like I still knew it was her in the beginning, but I still was like so unsure. And it's just a program running. It was, at the time, it was relationship OCD is what it was. I was terrified of commitment because any relationship I had ever really been in was a mirror of my parents' relationship and was not healthy and was toxic. And it scared me. And I think it scared me even more because Rachel was not these women that I had dated. And, subconsciously at that point, like it just terrified me that like she even said, I'm not the girl you fuck around with, I'm the girl you marry.
I said that the first day we met in person before any sort of anything was happening.
Yeah, and that always stuck with me. So I just knew that like if I was going to be with Rachel, then like that was it. So, I consciously chose to kiss this girl and I immediately knew like, oh, this isn't actually what I want, but I still liked the attention and validation that I was getting from her. So these are all things that I had to work through.
And you had to experience.
And I had to experience. And we'll get into the specifics of why, because Rachel at first didn't understand. And then she read this incredible book called The Body Keeps the Score. 10 out of 10 recommend. I think we should do an episode just on books and how
much they helped
and like specifics of them. Great. Here's another episode, books. But, they basically said anyone that experiences a certain type of trauma, which creates PTSD, it literally, you're literally blocked from being able to see something or
make that new choice without the experience of, oh, this is not what I want.
Like tested with MRIs and CT scans and like images of the brain to see like, oh, it's you actually physically, you can't make that choice until
you can clearly see
it while you're in the experience.
Yeah.
So like I had to have these experiences, and it was really hard. And we're going to talk about, us specifically, but like I had to come back when it was time and tell Rachel what I had done. I had to be completely gutturally honest about her. I had to let her read whatever text messages she wanted to. I had to just be completely honest with her.
And the reason that's so important is because, yes, we were broken up. Yes, we were free to do what we wanted, but Kevin knew, because this wasn't the first time this old identity, this
old pattern
program popped up, and I was solely the collateral damage. So it was such a big deal, even though we were broken up, because it was an old pattern resurfacing yet again that was going to affect me and solely me.
Right. So, okay, so where do we go to next from there? Eventually with time, let's talk about medication real quick within this time frame. So like, within these 3 years of this dark night, I was off for 2 years, and then I finally decided to give myself the relief. Like I had a therapist who was like, hey, you're not less holy, you're not less spiritual, and finally I said okay, and I gave myself like 4 or 5 months. And again, it always gets worse before it gets better when you start specifically an SSRI, at least in my experience. So the first few weeks I was like, oh, I don't know. And then I finally started to get some relief.
Yeah.
Like, I said 16 months of this like spiritual psychosis.
Feeling like you're drowning.
Which leads me with another 8 months of like out of that spiritual psychosis, but I'm still in that vice grip and pain. So the SSRI just allowed me room to breathe. So I would go on for, 4, 5, 6 months. I would come off for 4 or 5, 6 months just to see, okay, I know what's going on now. I know I have to change these programs.
Let's see where I'm at.
And I think I did that twice, on and off.
And in like the grand scheme of things, timeline-wise, when it's just so funny how obviously it's all happening as it's supposed to, but right, I have my MDMA experience. Kevin and I have a phone call, and on that phone call, on that FaceTime, is when he told me, hey, there's this thing called relationship OCD. Hey, I'm now realizing that I have OCD. And like, for me, I mean, the amount of, wow, I'm not crazy that I felt.
And the way, it's so funny. I'm so glad you brought that up.
Yeah, I think that's important.
The way I rediscovered that I still had OCD, because as I said, as a kid, I did everything in sets of 4 to try to create some sense of control. I had this nightly routine that took me an hour once everyone went to bed. And I had been diagnosed at this point with ADHD from my psychiatrist, and I got prescribed Adderall because I really wanted, like, my brain, I could not focus. Like, I would disassociate, and I just, I'm so deep in it that, like, my nervous, blah, blah, blah. So I get my prescription for Adderall, and it was I think it was 30 milligrams of, like, the little beads in the capsule, so, like, the slow extended release. And an hour later, I feel the come up of this medicine, and it is a nightmare. I feel so much panic. My heart's beating. And then the worst part is, like, 6 hours after that, the second dose releases. Because that's the whole point, is extended. So, like, the gels around the little balls are thicker and they dissolve. So, but what was so beautiful is my psychiatrist told me that sometimes if someone takes Adderall, like, the opposite can happen, whereas, like, instead of being able to, like, focus on a task at hand, you'll focus on all the negative.
Yeah.
You'll focus on all the ruminating.
Yeah, and that's what
so
happened.
all of a sudden, I became hyper aware of my brain ruminating and me not being able to control it at all, and it scared the absolute piss out of me. So it was one of these moments where I don't even remember how
You turned to your pendulum.
Turned to my pendulum. I was Googling. I basically came to the realization that, oh my God, this is OCD. Oh my God, I have OCD. I still have OCD. I've had it this whole time, which was imperative. It was like the last chunk that needed to fall into place so that I could start to work on it, to start to release it, or at least, manage it so that it didn't control my life.
And this is what we talked about on our FaceTime in February.
Yes.
Is you had OCD and how that went into relationship OCD, and he told me about his ADHD and this whole experience. And I remember then is when you were like, and I'm toying with the idea of going back on my SSRI. This is the beginning of February, and you went on at the end of February.
Yeah. And that was the second round. And then I came off again one more time for like 6 months. I went on for 6 months, came off for 6 months. And now I've been on.
Well, this is what happens every time. That was your first round of going back on. You chose to go off.
Sure, I'm just talking about, like, I went on and went off, I went off, I went on, I went off.
You went on now.
Yes.
Yeah. So
that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Okay. Great.
The timeline.
It gets muddy.
Yeah.
Also, it's not important.
It's not. It doesn't really matter. So it wasn't until this last round, which I started in March of 2025. It's now February of 2026 currently. But in March of 2025, I toy with the idea. I go back and forth. I start it. For this time, it took a little even bit longer. Usually it takes me 2 to 3 weeks, like 20 to 21 days when I start to feel some relief. This one was like 4 to 6 weeks.
This was hard.
Which can happen with SSRIs when your brain remembers something that it used to take and it might not, whatever. So I was like, oh my God, it's not going to work. And about 6 weeks later, I finally started to feel some relief. I finally started to sleep. I finally started to feel like myself again. And to be honest, ever since that March, really that April, I've just continually felt better and better and better and better. And that said, like, sometimes it's 2 steps forward, 1 step back. But like I have definitely noticed I'm sitting here talking to you, and there's nothing I could have never ever done. And I wanted to do it so badly while I was in it. I was like, I'm in it, I want to show people. But like my nervous system,
the building of this studio never would have happened because you didn't have the space for it.
Yeah. No. So that's why I say it was 3 years, because it was literally March to March of last year. So yeah, I mean, that's a very broad explanation of my personal dark night of the soul. Sarah Landon said, once again, that the dark night lasts as long as you withhold love for yourself. But in order to get that love, I had to go through everything that I went through in my dark night consciously choose differently than the program had chosen over and over and over and over again, right? These neural pathways are ingrained so deeply within our brains. And it's like by rote. It's like it's like driving. You don't even think about hitting the gas or brake or whatever. Everything just happens automatically. It's like you're on autopilot. But once you start to cultivate this awareness, you start to realize, oh, I have a choice here.
Yes, and then you can actually choose to show yourself
But even
self-love.
choosing, right? It's like steering. I always say it's like steering a cruise ship. Like you can't just turn the wheel of a cruise ship and it just.
Yeah.
It takes time for that whole
and choosing again and again
to create that new path, and eventually carve that new pathway into your brain, and then that becomes your new program. You know, it takes X amount of times to create a new pattern, or you know, I don't know what the exact number is, but it's just time and time again that you have to continue to choose differently in order to rewrite what was going on.
And for your body to understand this new receiving, that this is what safety feels like, that this is what love feels like, that this is what gratitude, peace, joy feels like, to actually truly understand that.
Yeah. Yeah, and you know, anybody watching this, listen up. You're going to get through it. And you may want to reach through and punch me right in the face, because I remember I would hear people say that to me. I would hear people say, like, you're going to get through it, and then you're going to
understand why this whole thing happened.
And then you're going to be so grateful that it happened and you won't change a thing. And I was like, what the fuck are these? They don't know what my heart feels like. They don't know what my nervous system feels like.
You feel like you're the only person going through that. I mean, you're the only person going through your experience.
Yes, but you literally feel so disconnected from your reality.
You're like, I'm the one who's not going to make it.
Yes, that was the biggest thing I kept saying. I'm like, what if I'm the one?
What if I'm
the
one?
What if I'm the one? And, you know, I read, again,
Countless.
Hundreds, if not thousands of these people's stories, and watched and listened. And they all said the same thing. They all had these feelings. So I promise you, if you're watching this and you're in your dark night, you are going to get through it. I swear on my sweet baby Jesus life, you will get through it. If you lean on your support system, if you know,
allow your body to show you, to teach you, to guide you. It will show you what it needs.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
It will. It's so scary, because I have never met a person who did not have to do some work to experience safety within presence in their body. I remember the first time I experienced, and this was very recently, how scared my alter ego, right, the part of me that has been passed down all of these stories, how scared I was to exist in the present moment. That felt absolutely terrifying. Because when I was a child, and for the most part just existed in the present moment because I didn't yet know anything else, that was taken away.
Yeah.
And that happens to most of us, if not all of us, at some degree, at some moment in time, and we're just desperately trying to get back to living in the present moment and understanding that by constantly bringing up the past and constantly thinking about the future and like putting our attention there, it's impossible to then live in the present because time isn't real, time isn't linear.
We'll do an episode on
you're
time,
living in the
for
past, sure. You're actually just then living in the past.
So when I say like you'll get through it, I say that because if I wasn't honest and vulnerable enough to lean on Rachel, to lean on Trent and Neil, to lean on Amory and Sarah, and this beautiful small group of people, and even my mom. My mom is now on her own healing journey.
Own beautiful journey.
It's incredible, and I'm so proud of her. I mean, she's been on it, but now she's just consciously on it. If I didn't lean on those people, I truly do not know if I would be sitting here talking to you. And I don't say that lightly, having been a fireman and an EMT, I've seen my fair share of suicides, of lives that were just ended much too soon. And I honestly can't say whether or not I'd be here. And that's how scary the dark night can be. And I don't say that to like terrify you. I say that to say, like, if you're in it and you have those feelings, please tell someone. Please reach out to anybody.
Whether that's
reach
a
out to
therapist
me
or us or a friend or a family member or a stranger who's put into your life and asks you, how are you?
Yeah. Yeah. How are you?
They're not asking by coincidence.
No.
And all our alter ego will do in these moments is convince us we are alone.
Yeah.
And convince us not to share. Because it wants us to continue to experience this loneliness and this fear and this panic.
Yeah.
And what we're here to do is to reach out to our community, to our support system, to know that we have that holding of space to do what we need to do to find ourselves again.
Well said, my love.
Thank you.
Lean on your people. It's going to be scary, and your brain's going to tell you not to, but it's really important. It's part of the journey.
Yeah.
It
Allow
really is.
people to help you, because you cannot give from an empty cup.
And I say that being someone who receiving help was unsafe.
Yeah.
It felt unsafe in my body. That's why, like, when Jordan offered to pay my rent when my money was tied up, like, it was so uncomfortable.
Yeah.
It was like, as a kid asking for help, like, I didn't get help. I didn't get the help I needed.
You actually got the opposite.
So to me, I had that program of like,
Don't just do it yourself.
Yeah.
Put your head down.
Nope.
Do it yourself.
It's why as a kid, like, I never spoke up about my OCD and my, doing everything in sets of 4, and I would have countless nights where I would just not sleep. But I was so afraid that I would be locked away from my family. I would literally lay in bed, visualize my like mental hospital room and the bars and the windows.
Dude, OCD is no joke.
But yeah, I kind of lost my train of thought.
You're not alone.
Yeah, you're not alone. Allow yourself to receive
receive
help.
help.
That's what it was. And
love.
And it's part of the journey. It's part of it to know, by you allowing yourself to receive help, you're allowing yourself to receive love. And you want to talk about, like, dark night only lasts as long as you withhold love from yourself.
And then your cup overfloweth.
We are going to do an episode about, like, very specific things that we did throughout our experience of this darkness that really helped. So please stay tuned for that, because some really beautiful pieces of information that I wish I had.
And what I think is so cool about the two of us doing it is we had similarities, but we had such different experiences. And again, I've said this before, what worked for him did not work for me. What worked for me did not work for him. I have a very specific journey of not being able to take medication, right? So, like, very different avenues. So again, it just goes to say, like, take what resonates. Try something. If it doesn't work for you, do not try to fit a square peg into a round hole. Let it go. See if something else comes to you, it feels good in your body, and then try that. And if that helps, amazing. If it doesn't, hopefully there's something else that will.
We did it.
You did it. You did it.
I did it.
Yeah. I was thinking at the top of this, and I don't know if you can cut this, but just how full circle this is and how cool it is to, like, us then and, like, be here now. And be the person recording something.
Wild.
When that's all you wanted in that moment.
I wanted to,
was
but
this
it was
now.
so uncomfortable that like, but I also felt like I had to do it. Like again, I had to do it now. I had to do everything now. You don't have to do everything now. If you're ever shown things, like if you get a download or an intuitive hit, they're just showing you
What's
a possibility of what's coming. It doesn't mean you have to
ASAP.
like do it. And that I learned the hard way.
Yeah.
So please understand that like you don't have to
It's
rush.
not
There's
going
no rush.
anywhere.
There's no end. It's such a the journey is what you're here for. There's no end.
And what is meant for you will never leave you. So, and again, time doesn't work
The
in
way
a
we've been
linear
taught.
way. So when they show you something, it could be 5 years down the road. It could be 10. It could be 20. It could be next week.
All right. We could just sit here and ramble.
I know. Oh, you turned right when I was.
You see that? It's abuse. Trying to stab me with her fingernail.
Yes, my fingernails.
All right, my friends, my loves.
Oh.
I'm hungry.
Somebody's hungry. It's probably 5 o'clock.
Oh, I hope you guys can hear that. That would just be so funny. All right, until...
I want to say it after you, because...
Oh, until next time.
Until next time.
Ding.